A man stands alone at the end of his own dock near midnight and reaches his arms out toward the dark water. Across the bay, there is nothing to see but one small green light, burning at the end of a pier he cannot reach. He is trembling. He has thrown the most famous parties on Long Island, hundreds of strangers, oceans of champagne, and yet here he is, alone, worshiping a speck of light like a man saying a prayer. Before this summer is over, that same man will be floating dead in his own swimming pool, and almost no one will come to say goodbye. This is the story of the green light, what it promised him, and why reaching for it destroyed him. His name is Jay Gatsby, but that isn't the name he was born with. Our guide into this world is a young man named Nick Carraway, and the first thing he tells us is the advice his father gave him. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, remember that not everyone had the advantages you had. Nick came back from the war restless, so in the spring of 1922, he moves east to learn the bond business, renting a small weather-beaten bungalow on a stretch of Long Island called West Egg. This is where the newly rich live. Loud money, gaudy money, squeezed between two enormous mansions. Nick's little house is easy to miss. But the mansion right beside his belongs to a man he has never met, a man whose parties light up the sky every weekend. Nick doesn't know it yet, but he has just moved in next door to a legend. Across the water in East Egg, where the old money lives, Nick goes to dinner with his cousin Daisy and her husband, Tom Buchanan. Tom is a former college football star, enormously wealthy, with a cruel streak he barely bothers to hide. Daisy is lovely, laughing, unbearably charming, and clearly unhappy. During dinner, the phone keeps ringing. It's Tom's mistress in the city, and everyone at the table knows it. Later, alone with Nick, Daisy says something that lands like a small cold stone. She tells him what she said when her baby daughter was born. "I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world. A beautiful little fool." Beneath all the silk and sunlight, something in this golden marriage is already rotting, and Nick can feel it. There is a place you have to drive through to get from the mansions to the city, and Fitzgerald makes sure you never forget it. It's a valley of ashes, a gray wasteland where the ash from the city's furnaces is dumped, where gray men move dimly through gray dust. And brooding over all of it is a giant faded billboard. The eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckleberg, blue and enormous, painted spectacles staring out of no face at all. The eyes of a forgotten advertisement, watching everything and doing nothing. This is what sits between the two shining shores, the wreckage the rich drive past on their way to the party. Tom stops the car here. He wants Nick to meet someone. Her name is Myrtle, and she is Tom's mistress. Myrtle is the wife of George Wilson, a beaten-down mechanic whose garage sits in the ashes. She dreams of Tom's world, and when she's with him, she puts on the airs of a woman who belongs to it. Tom takes her and Nick to a cramped apartment in the city, and the drinks pour, and the afternoon turns loud and ugly. Then Myrtle does the one thing Tom will not allow. She starts chanting Daisy's name, taunting him with his own wife. With one short, brutal motion, Tom silences her, breaking her nose in front of everyone. The party stops, blood on the fine tablecloth. And in that instant, the whole glittering world shows what it really is underneath. Careless, violent people who will hurt anyone who forgets their place. Nick wants to leave, but he can't stop watching. Then finally the parties. All summer, Gatsby's mansion roars. Cars stream through the gates by the hundreds. Orchestras play, fountains of cocktails flow. Strangers arrive who were never invited and leave without ever meeting their host. And the guests trade wild rumors about the man who pays for all of it. That he killed a man once, that he was a German spy in the war, that he's a nephew of the Kaiser. Nobody actually knows him. Nobody has really talked to him. He drifts through his own party like a ghost, watching, apart, never drinking. Everyone is here for Gatsby, and Gatsby seems to be looking straight through all of them, towards something none of them can see. One night, Nick finally receives an actual invitation. He is about to meet the man himself. Nick is at the party, not knowing which of these strangers is his host, when he falls into conversation with a calm, smiling man about his own age. They talk easily, and then the man says, almost apologizing, "I thought you knew, old sport. I'm afraid I'm not a very good host." He is Gatsby, and there is that smile. The kind of smile you meet maybe 4 times in your life. A smile that seems to understand you exactly as you want to be understood. that believes in you the way you long to believe in yourself. In one moment, Gatsby stops being a rumor and becomes a man, but a strange man. He calls everyone old sport. He hovers at the edge of his own celebration, and Nick senses that all this noise is somehow pointed at a single purpose he cannot yet name. So who is Gatsby, really? He tells Nick a dazzling story. Son of wealthy people, all dead now, educated at Oxford, a war hero decorated by every country in Europe, a man who hunted big game and collected jewels. It's told so smoothly and so absurdly that Nick almost laughs. It sounds like a costume. Then Gatsby introduces him to a business associate at lunch, Meyer Wolfsheim, a gambler wearing cufflinks made of human molars, and mentions casually that this is the man who fixed the World Series, who bent the faith of 50 million people for a profit. Suddenly, the fortune has a shadow behind it. Bootlegging, backroom deals, the mansion, the parties, the silk shirts, all of it built on money that won't survive daylight. The dream is real, but its foundation is not. Now the secret. Nick's friend Jordan pulls him aside and tells him the truth that reorganizes everything. 5 years ago, in Louisville before the war, a young officer named Gatsby fell in love with a girl named Daisy, the same Daisy who is now Nick's cousin, now Tom's wife. He went off to fight. She didn't wait. She married Tom. And ever since, Gatsby has been building his entire life around getting her back. The fortune, to impress her. The mansion, bought because it sits directly across the bay from hers. The parties, thrown night after night in the desperate hope that one evening she might simply wander in. And that green light he reaches for in the dark, it burns at the end of Daisy's dock. Every gaudy thing this man owns is a message meant for one person who has no idea he's there. So Nick agrees to help. He invites Daisy to tea and doesn't tell her Gatsby will be there. And the untouchable Gatsby, the man of 1,000 rumors, falls to pieces. He's pale, soaked with rain, terrified as a boy. Then Daisy walks in, and the years collapse. He takes them next door to show her his house, room by shining room, and something in him is finally unbearably happy. He starts flinging his beautiful English shirts into the air, dozens of them, coral and apple green and orange, and Daisy bends her head into the soft pile and begins to cry. "It makes me sad," she sobs, "because I've never seen such beautiful shirts." 5 years of longing, and here it is, the dream in his hands at last. This is the summit, and nothing in this story climbs higher. But here's the strange, quiet thing Nick notices at the top of the mountain. Gatsby glances across the bay, and the green light is just a light now. For 5 years it glowed with the whole promise of his future. Now Daisy is standing beside him, real and warm and human, and one enchanted object in his collection has quietly gone dim. He has traded the dream for the thing itself, and no thing on earth could hold what he'd poured into that light. Something in him already senses the loss, because Gatsby doesn't want Daisy the way she is now, a wife, a mother, 5 years older. He wants to rewind time completely, to erase everything that happened while he was gone. He wants the impossible, and he genuinely believes he can have it. To understand that belief, you have to know who Gatsby actually was. He was born James Gatz on a failing farm to poor, unsuccessful parents. His imagination refused to accept as his own. At 17, he rowed out to a millionaire's yacht, warned the man of a coming storm, and reinvented himself on the spot. New name, new past, new self, sprung entirely from his own idea of who he deserved to be. Years later, his father shows Nick a boyhood schedule the boy once wrote in the back of a worn adventure book. Rise at 6, exercise, study electricity, practice elocution, read one improving book a week, be better to his parents. That is the engine at the heart of Gatsby. A ferocious, almost holy belief that a person can simply invent a greater life and reach it by pure will. And that belief is exactly what's about to break him. Nick tries, gently, to warn him. "You can't repeat the past," he says. Gatsby wheels around, astonished that anyone would even say it. "Can't repeat the past?" he cries. "Why, of course you can." He looks around wildly, as if the past were hiding somewhere just out of reach in the shadows of his own lawn. He doesn't just want Daisy to love him now. He needs her to walk up to Tom and say she never loved him at all, to blot out 5 years of her life so that the story can start again clean, exactly where it stopped. It is the most romantic and the most impossible demand in the book, and he is about to ask her to make it come true in front of her husband. The affair can't stay hidden. On the hottest day of the summer, they all gather at Daisy's house. Tom, Daisy, Gatsby, Nick, and Jordan, and the air is thick and unbearable. Daisy, careless, lets her voice slip. She looks at Gatsby with her whole heart in her eyes, right across the lunch table, and Tom sees it. Just like that, the man who keeps a mistress in the ashes is consumed with rage that his wife might love someone else. He can't stand the heat, or the silence, or the old sport this stranger keeps calling him. So Tom does what powerful men do when they feel the ground move. He forces the whole party into the city to have it out. They take a suite at the Plaza Hotel, and everything Gatsby has built for 5 years is about to be tested in one sweltering room. In that hotel room, the dream meets the daylight. Earlier that day, Gatsby had tried to name what makes Daisy so intoxicating and landed on something devastating. Her voice is full of money. That's the trap he never saw. Daisy isn't a woman he can rescue. She is the old money, the golden, careless world he spent his whole life trying to buy his way into. And now, Tom attacks. He's dug into Gatsby's past and empties it onto the table. The bootlegging, the drugstore selling illegal alcohol, the criminal money behind the polished smile. Then he turns to Daisy and asks the only question that matters. Gatsby demands she say it. Say she never loved Tom, that there were never any 5 years, only him. And Daisy tries. She really tries, but she can't. I did love him once, she says, breaking. But I loved you too. Too. That one small word is the whole tragedy. He asked for all or nothing, the past made perfect. And two is neither. In front of him, quietly, the dream of 5 years cracks straight down the middle. And Tom, sensing he's won, contemptuously sends Daisy home in Gatsby's own car. They drive back through the valley of ashes in the fading light, and the summer's violence comes due. Down in the gray dust, Myrtle, half mad and mistaking the car for Tom's, runs out into the road toward it. The car doesn't stop. In an instant she is gone, killed on the very ground where the great faded eyes stare down at everything and save no one. Later, Gatsby tells Nick the truth he means to bury forever. Daisy was the one driving. But Gatsby, without a second's hesitation, says he will take the blame himself. He'll carry it for her. He still cannot see what the reader already can, that the woman he's protecting has already begun slipping back toward the safety of her husband and will not lift a finger to save him. That night, Nick finds Gatsby standing guard in the dark outside the Buchanan's window, watching for a signal from Daisy that will never come. Inside, through the glass, Nick sees Tom and Daisy sitting close over cold chicken and ale, not happy exactly, but bound together, conspiring, whole, two careless people closing ranks. And out on the lawn stands Gatsby, faithfully watching over nothing at all, guarding a woman who was already chosen. It is the loneliest image in the book. The man threw open his house to thousands, and now, in the one moment that counts, he stands alone in the dark, keeping a vigil for a door that is quietly locked. Nick walks home and leaves him there, in the moonlight, believing. The next morning, Nick doesn't want to leave Gatsby alone, so they talk, and Gatsby finally lowers the costume and tells the true story. Dan Cody, the yacht, the poor boy who built himself out of nothing but wanting. Nick is late for work, they part at the drive, and then Nick does something he's proud of for the rest of his life. He calls back across the lawn the only compliment he ever pays this strange, criminal, hopeless man. They're a rotten crowd. You're worth the whole bunch of them put together. Gatsby smiles that radiant, understanding smile one last time. His pink suit a bright splash of color against the white steps. Nick disapproved of him from beginning to end, and he meant every word, because next to the careless people, this dreamer, for all his lies, was the realest of them all. Gatsby waits all day by the telephone for a call from Daisy. It never rings. So he does what he's done every hot afternoon of the summer. He decides to use the pool he never once swam in. He floats out on a mattress across the still water, waiting for a message from a world that has already forgotten him. but someone else is coming through the trees. George Wilson, Myrtle's husband, wild with grief, wrongly certain that the man who owned that car both loved his wife and killed her. There is a single burst of violence by the water, and then it is over. Gatsby gone, and Wilson too, both undone by the carelessness of people who will never pay for any of it. The dreamer paid the price for a crime he didn't commit, protecting a woman who is already gone. Now comes the part that breaks you. Nick tries to give Gatsby a funeral and discovers that the man who fed thousands has no one. The hundreds of party guests vanish. Daisy sends no message, no flower. She and Tom have simply left town. Wolfsheim, the great friend, won't get involved. Nick phones and phones into a silence. In the end, only a handful come out in the rain. Nick, a few servants, one old partygoer with owl-eyed glasses who used to marvel at the crowds, and Gatsby's heartbroken father, who arrives clutching that boyhood schedule as proof his Jimmy was always bound for greatness. At the grave, the owl-eyed man says the truest, saddest line in the book, "The poor devil." Thousands drank his champagne. Not one of them came to stand in the rain. Standing in that emptiness, Nick finally understands the people he came east admiring. Tom and Daisy were careless people, he realizes. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money, into their vast carelessness, and let other people clean up the mess they had made. When Nick later runs into Tom, Tom feels no guilt at all. In his mind, everything he did was justified, and he sails on untouched. That is the quiet horror underneath all the glamour. The dreamer is dead in the ground, and the careless people are fine. Better than fine, because money is a kind of armor that lets you break the world and never feel the cut. Nick has seen enough of the East. He is going home. But first, he goes back, one last time, to Gatsby's empty house. On his last night, Nick sprawls on the beach below the dark mansion and thinks about the very first sailors who saw this coast, the fresh green breast of a new world, a land that once, for one breathless moment, matched a human being's capacity for wonder. And he thinks of Gatsby, reaching out across the water toward that green light, believing his dream was so close he could hardly fail to grasp it. He didn't know it was already behind him. That is the green light, the future that gleams just ahead and forever slips away, the past we keep rowing back toward no matter how hard we pull. Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgastic future that year by year recedes before us. So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. Thanks for reading with us. If this one moved you, stay for our next great tragedy of a man undone by a single dream.